Hello, I'm MBX2Cat and welcome back to the second channel video. Today I have some more Geography of Toycat for you all. It's Everton's second channel series where I talk about geography and empires and stuff, apparently. This is something fun I did for the former British Empire, and it's actually a really interesting thing that a lot of countries in Europe actually have, where they have parts of their country that are really attached to their country in this very bizarre, thin way that technically count as part of that country. And the biggest example, I think, in all of the world is the example of the Danish Empire. And you might think, what's the Danish Empire? I've literally never heard of that till just now. It's because it's not really the Danish Empire, it's the Kingdom of Denmark, it's the Danish realm, and it actually includes one of the most recognized countries on Earth that most people think is one of the biggest countries on Earth, but it's not even a country because it's part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and that country is of course Greenland. So Greenland is one of the most recognizable countries to anyone that looks at a map ever because it's this landmass right here. And one thing I need to say before I go any further is the fact that Greenland is of course massively bigger on a map of the world that's, flat and stretched out because of the Mercator projection. Long story short, if you're looking at a sphere, it's going to be much smaller, and the reason even though it's the world's largest island in spite of that, Greenland is a very, very big place, despite not being green, and despite not being the biggest country, and despite not being a country at all. It is in fact a very interesting situation, and it's part of the Kingdom of Denmark, something I figured I'd talk about with today's video, which hopefully you all do enjoy. Here's the modern day Danish Empire / Kingdom of Denmark. I like saying empire, even though it's not correct for any of these because there was no Danish emperor, but still, let's talk about first of all, what the Danish Empire is, what it includes, because it is a free country state. They do the same thing the Dutch, the Netherlands does, where they say, oh, we're all technically equals on this level. The same thing the UK does, where it's like, oh yeah, we're all totally the same and equal, but there is most of their power invested in Denmark, of course. Denmark is a Scandinavian country in origin. A lot of people get Scandinavian and Finno-Scandinavian confused. This is, Finno-Scandinavian confused. This is Scandinavia, these three countries right here. Again, the geographical definition is confusing, because Denmark is both it is a Scandinavian country, so one of these three countries. It's a Finno-Scandinavian country, but it's also a Nordic country. So bear in mind, it's all those things combined, which is a little bit confusing, but just keep in mind that Denmark is the lowest, the southernmost of the Scandinavian countries. Of all the countries you picture, all those things that I know you're picturing right now, Denmark is the southernmost full of those, the most, you could argue, down to earth, or you could just say, yeah, it's the most southernmost, and it's also the least territorially sized in terms of just the country itself, because it is just a peninsula on the top of Germany, and then there's a lot of islands, 443 if I'm not mistaken, and the biggest of those islands is Zealand. Zealand is, it's spelled Zealand in English the same way New Zealand is. It has nothing to do with New Zealand, it just, again, coincidental name thing, and Zealand is where their capital, Copenhagen, is. So I want to come back more to Denmark in a little bit, but just keep in mind that's Denmark the country. Then they've got two parts of their kingdom which are not directly part of Denmark, but are part of the Danish realm. So this means that they control their own, they control pretty much everything of their own, besides the legal system, besides their defense. Currency is like semi-reserved, a lot of, rules like that. Basically, officially they're part of Denmark, but they can do as much of their own stuff as they like. There is the Faroe Islands, again, a collection of islands which have a distinct Faroese people here. The reason they are, a distinct part of the Danish realm, as opposed to just Denmark, is because, one, look at the distance there. Two, because, again, they've got their own people that have had, like, a giant, one of the longest continuous parliaments in existence. And three, it's the fact that one of the longest standing parliaments in existence, not continuous. But that three is the fact that they are, of course, very remote and separated and have a very distinct economy. And as a result of this, they're not an official part of the EU, unlike Denmark is, which creates this weird situation where if you're a Danish citizen moving to another part of what is officially Denmark, you stop being an EU citizen for the purpose of EU. It's weird stuff, but that's the Faroe Islands. I want to talk more about these in a little bit. But then we've also got, the big daddy. It's Greenland. Greenland is a part of the Danish realm and the Kingdom of Denmark too. However, the thing about Greenland a lot of people don't realize is even though it's the world's largest island, and even though, you might think, well, I know it's not as big as you might think, even though it's this giant territory mass that, really could be it's basically its own little thing, is that one, it's only a part of Europe because it's part of, Denmark, so culturally it's a part, or not culturally, but, by the official definitions, you could argue it's Europe, but in terms of landmass, it is a island just off the coast of North America, so it is, Greenland is a North American thing, which is, that's up for dispute, you can look it up, but for the most part, most definitions say North America. However, as it's part of Denmark, and Denmark is in Europe, you can generally say that way. So it's this weird, crossing of the two lands, because, well, indeed, in fact, if you don't know, when you fly from Europe to North America, you'll usually actually fly over Greenland. At least from the UK, every single flight I've done, for the most part, has gone over Greenland, and you might think that doesn't make any sense, but it's because of the curvature of the Earth, and it really does just go to show that Greenland is this midway point between, again, here's all of Europe over here, and here's the United States, the North America, I should say, which is how that whole thing works. So, yeah, Greenland is a very notable country because most of it is uninhabitable, and even the bits that are inhabitable aren't very inhabited because there isn't much reason to inhabit it, but they are inhabited by native Greenlandic people. They speak Greenlandic, or they're called Inuits or something. The definitions are kind of confusing, but they are their own distinct people. Some Danish people live there, and that's kind of a thing. And yeah, like with the Faroe Islands, they control all of their stuff themselves, and a lot of them consider themselves to be their own country in their own rights. A lot of people consider Greenland to be a country, but in the same way that you can't go around saying that I don't know, the Falkland. Let's pick a better example. You can't say that the sovereign areas of the sovereign military base areas on Cyprus. You can't say that's its own little country because it just doesn't make sense. It's a part of the UK. You can't go around saying that, oh yeah, well, Bermuda's its own country, although you almost can. It's the same sort of thing with Denmark, where by all official international definitions, this is a part of Denmark. So yeah, those are the three parts of the Danish realm. It's a really small empire by a number of individual bits, but the individual bits are really notable in their own way. Faroe Islands, at some point I would love to go to these things. I zoomed in on the wrong islands. I'm terrible. For the record, those are Scotland has like two groupings of islands very close nearby. These are the closest thing to the Faroe Islands. The Faroe Islands are very, very far away. But yeah, the Faroe Islands, they're really interesting to me because they are a part of Denmark, but they became a part of Denmark for the most devious thing ever, because Denmark and Norway had a very long-standing union for the greater part of the last millennium. Yeah, the last millennium. And yeah, Denmark and Norway had a union, and although Norway entered that union with the Faroe Islands and Greenland as part of it, by the end of the union, when they left it, they lost their rights to Greenland and they lost their rights to the Faroe Islands, which belonged to Denmark at the end. They also had to fund Copenhagen. It was this whole own thing, but yeah, the Faroe Islands became a part of Denmark, even though they weren't really Danish in any way, and even though they're not connected to Denmark in any way, and they had this really big drive for independence after World War II, because Denmark was, of course, not officially, again, the terms are really weird, like occupied to some extent. They were basically taken over by the Germans to some large extent, and because of that, the Faroe Islands were therefore taken over by the British, and the British, in fact, built the only airport on the islands to this day, which is this one right here, Vaga Flughaven, whatever. That place right here, you can find, that is the only airport on the island, and it's actually really far away from the capital, which is just over here. So, yeah, this is the capital, a very, very small capital, with just 17,000 people living there. That's the primary place, I guess, you would go if you came to these islands, unless you're here because of their beautiful nature. Again, they're very beautiful. As far as, beautiful islands, for the most part, I go, yeah, nice islands, really interesting. But this is one of those cases where I'm like, I would love to see that, because one of the biggest examples is this lake right here. This lake, if you get it from the right viewpoint, it literally looks like an impossible lake. So let me try and do that right now, and try and show you just how amazing this place is. It's this amazingly impossible lake. Let's maybe get someone else's viewpoint. I love, by the way, that Google Maps just has these little viewpoints you can see. But yeah, it's an impossible lake that really, really looks crazy ridiculous from certain angles. Maybe this one. Yeah, this is the one right here, where you can see how it's just like this crazy weird curved lake, and it looks so ridiculous and just it's serene in nature and stuff. It's got these islands. There's something like 17 of them. They are all distinct and individual in their own ways, and for the most part, they're just about connected. So that is the Faroe Islands. There's lots of interesting stuff going on. They used to be all considered their own little regions, but they keep consolidating them as time goes on, and it's all one electoral district now too. They do a lot of forward-thinking stuff on the Faroe Islands, a lot of weird stuff, and they really wanted independence for the longest time. They voted on independence, in fact. This is one of the craziest bits. They voted on independence, and then they won the independence vote, and then Denmark said no, and they said, okay then, and they tried to form a parliament, and then that parliament said, yeah, actually, we don't want to be independent anyway. And that's genuinely the situation in the Faroe Islands, which is why they're a part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Still, Denmark sends them a lot of money in Danish kroner each year, and they say, I guess this works. And the same thing's just about true of Greenland, actually. Greenland, again, actually, they got home rule in the last century, and they used this to leave the European Union. They're the only territory, the only thing before the UK, which is still in the process. We have no idea how that's going. They're the only part of the European Union to ever leave just officially. They just had a vote, and they said, yep, we're out. And that's what they did. So Greenland left the European Union just 30-something years ago, and like I said before, 30-something years now, and basically it's very interesting because they've got lots of fishing, and they apparently want to keep on doing that fishing, which is what they do. However, in spite of all the fishing and other things you do this high up in the world, because that realistically there aren't many great reasons to settle this north, which is why the most northmost settlement, which is the most native inhabited settlement in the world, is this one right here, by the way, Siorpaluk, the language is tricky, but basically the most northernmost thing is just over here, but the reality is, like, going this north is very, very tricky for humans to survive in, and it makes it tricky for much really economy stuff to get done, which is why 75%, if I'm not mistaken, that number, you know, dips and grows, but 75% of their economy comes from the, their, like, overall, like, money in the economy does come from the Danish government in general, including the only ferry service linking all of the places together, which is, like, it does one trip every 28 days, and that's like a public service where they lose loads of money. It's this really, really mind-boggling thing, but that's the thing about Greenland. It's not a very practical country, in my opinion. Maybe at some point soon, you know, something ice caps. And also a thing about Greenland you might not have known, is why half the island appears green when you look at it on a map, at least Google Maps, and this is because it's actually it's the world's biggest the world's biggest national park, not natural park. I mean, I guess it's a natural park too, but yeah, it's the world's biggest national park. It's bigger than, just this park alone is bigger than all but 29 of the world's countries, which is pretty nuts by itself, and basically this is just untouched land that is just it's like a reservation, national park, whatever you call it in your country. This is what all of this place is right here. It's absurdly large, and it's one of those places that has a permanent inhabitable population of 0. 0 people live on this part of the island, because it's mostly uninhabitable for humans, because, you know, guess what? There's a giant land of ice very, very north in the world. Guess what? We can't live there. And yeah, not only is there 0 people that officially live there, there's 31, I think, visitors as of last year. I think I have that statistic correctly. Go check it up if you want to check that. But I believe it was 31 people that went to this place last year. That is temporary people that went in and out. Just 31. This entire, bigger than all but 29 countries. You know, over 150 countries. This is, you know, this national park's bigger than, and only 31 other human beings in a year. That's just like, to me. But maybe it's not to you. Maybe you don't care. That's Greenland, though. There's everything you need to know about it. I made a whole video just showing off cool stuff. I could talk about Greenland forever, even if I don't know too much besides the fact that, like, oh yeah, it's like there's so many mysteries of Greenland's being covered, but just for one more, Nuuk is the capital, or Nuuk, depending on how you want to pronounce that, and this is pretty much the only place you can get into Greenland, but even then, even if you wanted to do that, you fly through Iceland, and at some point, I'd love to go to Greenland, but I'm probably not going to do it for right now, but at some point soon, that'd be great, right? So yeah, Greenland, pretty cool place, part of the Danish realm, alongside, which also gets some tourist money from that sort of stuff, alongside the Faroe Islands, the Faroe Islands, for some reason, like, these are the easiest islands to zoom into me, but I'm always zooming into the wrong thing. Jan Mayen, by the way, and Svalbard are still part of Norway. They didn't get stolen by Denmark. So yeah, Greenland, Faroe Islands, and then there's Denmark itself. So this is something like, you know, 98 to 99% of the population. It's not most of the land area. Most of the land area does go to Greenland, but it's most of where the Danish people live. If you're picturing Denmark, this is what you're picturing. And like I said, it's really, really intriguing to me because although, you know, it's a weird looking country on the map, it really is just like, here is a giant peninsula. As you can see, it's all just about connected. Then here's an island here, and then here's the biggest island, or here's the most important island, Zealand, because it has the capital, Copenhagen, on it, and then all the other islands just kind of grouped to its closest peninsula thing, and it just about works out. It makes a very habitable country that can produce a lot of pork, and yeah, with that said, let's talk about a few interesting things about Denmark, just in case you want them, because the big thing, the big myth about Denmark and the Nordic countries in general is that they have absurdly high minimum wages, and that's true. If you work at, you know, like any fast food chain, you're going to earn, you know, in US dollars equivalent, $20+, which is a lot, right? $20, that's a lot of money. How can they survive like that? And then people use it as their example of like, this is why something laws. And again, that I don't care about that argument. Have that argument to yourself. But the interesting thing about Denmark is the reason that their average wage is so high is because there is no minimum wage. You can charge whatever you want, but generally speaking, unions have set a level like that, which is, again, that's the whole country in general as far as I can tell. They have this very interesting like split of like, you know, have a capitalist-led economy, but have it in a very like socialist way, and it works for the Nordic. It works for most of the Nordic countries in a successful way. Whether you want that to be because, you know, you can say external reasons are the cause of that, or you can say that, but they do this, and it does have good results. You can fill in all the rest yourself. But I'm just saying, that's the fact about Denmark most people kind of miss, because, you know, people just want to like be like, oh, my argument's right for this reasons, that reasons, but that's just, there's the input, there's the output, work out the process yourself. But yeah, basically the capital city is Copenhagen, or Copenhagen, depending on how you want to pronounce that. I like Copenhagen personally, which has the biggest airport, or the most busy airport in the whole of the Scandinavian region. Copenhagen, it's really, really close to Copenhagen. I've been there like 2 or 3 times now. Super nice airport for the record, would 100% recommend it. Pretty great place. And yeah, basically the Copenhagen airport leads you into Copenhagen, but it also can lead you directly into Malmo and Sweden, and indeed the rest of the Scandinavian peninsula, because all of Scandinavia is connected to like mainland Europe via this one bridge. It's the longest rail and road, joint bridge in the world. It connects, again, Copenhagen and Malmo, just like this. And yeah, if you want to go anywhere in, Scandinavia to anywhere in mainland Europe by rail or road, you can do it with this here bridge, which is again, it's a cool thing to go over. I'd recommend it sometime. It's long, and long things are cool, right? And I guess it technically goes over a little island, but that's just that. Copenhagen itself, great city to visit. I'm not going to say too much about it because, Troycat travel stories, but I really, really love Copenhagen. Would 1,000,000% recommend it, and it's a pretty cheap place to get into, as far as I can tell. So yeah, as well as Copenhagen being the place right there, the two next biggest cities are found on the main land mass of the place, which is Aarhus and Aalborg. Aalborg. They've got the two A's. It's tricky. I looked up the pronunciation. It's all good. These are the second and third biggest cities. The two other places you'll be flying into, but they're on a different landmass than everything else, which is found just over here. So yeah, that's Denmark. Billion interesting things to say about the country. I would totally recommend looking it up. But the one thing I'll say before we go here is that this is something I learned from Hello Internet. Danish people love their flag more than almost any other country, and this is the Danish flag. So if you see this thing, you know it's a Danish person, and that's a cool little thing, right? But yeah, I hope you did all enjoy today's video, because Danish flag, something, something, something. I would recommend going. Honestly, I usually don't say this. Usually it's just here's a thing about a country. But I love Denmark, and you should love Denmark too. If you don't love Denmark, go to Denmark. Maybe you'll love it. Maybe this is some weird, ad for the Danish Tourism Board. But if it's not, but if you are the Danish Tourism Board, shoot me some money because I just advertised your country. There we go. That's how you make money on YouTube these days. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Second channel, don't care. Goodbye.